will improve. I know it's going to cool down a little bit this week, so it should be nice. So we're going to be reading today from the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. But before we do that, we can go ahead and recite the invocation prayers. We can do this all together, I think. That would be best. Om So, today we're going to be discussing a verse from the beginning of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone know the title of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita?
King of Knowledge?
Close.
The most confidential.
The most confidential knowledge, yes. So, to give a little bit of context, after Arjuna is asking questions, Krishna answers them in the last chapter. And after that, Krishna lets Arjuna know that he's about to tell him the most confidential knowledge. But why did Krishna select Arjuna to receive this confidential knowledge? You know, Arjuna wasn't a great scholar, he wasn't a yogi, a meditator, some holy man. He was a warrior about to be engaged in battle. You know, there were many great sages living at this time, and you know, Krishna could have spoken the Bhagavad Gita to any of these people. But why did he speak it to Arjuna, this confidential knowledge? Does anybody have any hints, guesses? Yes, Prabhu?
Because Arjuna was Krishna's devotee and friend.
Yes. So Arjuna had one qualification where it said, Bhaktosi me sakacheti. You are my devotee and my friend. This was Arjuna's qualification. You know, a qualification that these other great sages didn't have. These great sages, you know, had some awe and reverence to the Supreme Lord, but Arjuna saw Krishna as his friend. And it is also mentioned in the first verse of this chapter that he was never envious of the Supreme Lord. And because he was never envious, that made him qualified to receive this knowledge. So, we're actually going to read the second verse from this chapter. So we can all read that right here, right?
Yeah.
Rajaviti Rajaviti.
Yeah, there you go, Prabhu. Sanskrit scholar right here. No, I'll pull up the, you know, English kind of version. I can say it once and then you can repeat it after me. Rajavidya Rajaguyam
Rajavidya Rajaguyam
Pavitramidamuttamam
Pavitramidamuttamam
Pratyakshavargamam dharmyam
Pratyakshavargamam dharmyam
Susukam kartumavyayam.
Susukam kartumavyayam.
Does anyone want to give it a try? Yes, Nalini Mataji. Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
I cannot sing the tune,
But yeah, just recite it, that's okay.
it's fine.
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pratyaksha Dharmyam
Pratyakshagamam Dharmyam
Susukham Kartum Avyayam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Yes, Dana.
Oh, you want me
Yeah, go ahead.
Rajavidya Rajagayam
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pratyakshagamam
Pratyaksha-bhagamam dharmyam.
Pratyakshagamam Dharmyam
Susukam Kartam Avyayam
Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Yes.
Rajavidya Rajaguyam
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pratyaksha-bhagamam dharmyam
Pratyakshagamam Dharmyam
Susukam Kartum Avyayam
Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam.
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Pavitram idam uttamam.
Pavitram Idam Uttamam
Pratyaksha-bhagamam dharmyam.
Pratyakshagamam Dharmyam
Susukam kartum avyayam.
Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Okay. Does anyone recognize any of these words here? Raja? What does Raja mean? King? Okay, good. Any others? Vidya means knowledge. Nalini?
Pavitram is pure.
Pavitram, pure, okay. Hmm? Okay, nice, nice.
Pavitram,
Pavitram,
pure.
pure, yes.
Sukham.
Sukham? Happy.
Avyayam means eternal.
Eternal. Okay, good, good. So these are all kind of words that we recognize. They were all pretty good. You know, Raja Vidya, Raja means king, and Pavitram, yeah, that's purest. Sukham, actually it's Susukam, which means very happy. And then Avyayam is like everlasting, yeah, so like eternal. So, Parvati, could you read the translation of this verse and then give like a little summary of what you understood?
This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secret. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyful performed.
Nice. So what did you get from this text?
So basically that understanding Krishna consciousness is like the highest level of education. Like you have like elementary and then eventually you get like a master's degree. So like you could compare like getting like a master's degree or like a PhD.
Yeah. Nice, nice. So there's a lot of nice things that Krishna is talking about here. But the first two words, this knowledge, he doesn't say what this knowledge is, does he? He just says this knowledge. So what is this knowledge that Krishna is referencing? So Srila Prabhupada gives an explanation in the purport. So I'm just going to say what he says. The king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. So devotional service, essentially. But it's a little bit deeper than that. What constitutes devotional service? How do we perform this devotional service? Who can perform this devotional service? All sorts of different things that need to be dived deeper into. Now, this is a very long purport where Srila Prabhupada, he goes into detail about this confidential knowledge. So, unfortunately, due to time, we're not going to be reading the whole entirety of the purport. We're going to be reading sections from it, and I'm going to jump a little bit around, so please forgive me. But everything that he says in the purport will hopefully be summarized. This is the first paragraph that we're going to read. Rasvikar Prabhu, could you read this paragraph?
The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the second chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that this body is perishable and that soul is not perishable. Antavanta imi deha nityashyuktaha sariranaha. That is confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from the body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within this body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as a constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of knowledge.
Nice. So, if you could give a one-sentence summary, just one sentence, on what this knowledge is, what would you say?
It's all about the soul being active once it leaves the body, but the whole knowledge that we are trying to talk about is about the soul's activities in spiritual basically.
Yes. Anyone else want to try to give just a one-sentence summary of what the knowledge is?
The soul is always active.
The soul is eternal.
The soul is eternal. Yeah, I mean, it's simple. Simple, nice, yes. One more.
The soul is always active.
The soul is always active. Yes, so this is about the soul, right? I would say that, I guess my one-sentence summary would be, performing this devotional service, understanding that we are the eternal soul and eternal servants of the Supreme Lord eternally. So the soul is that important part of the living entity, right? Without the soul, the body can't do anything. It's just gonna be a statue almost. And in one of our most recent 10-minute calls, we were discussing Bhagavad Gita 342. And it was talking about the hierarchy of different kind of, I guess you could say, elements. You have the body, which is considered dull matter, which is like on the lowest platform. And then you have the senses, you've got the mind, you've got the intelligence. And then you have the soul, which is kind of like overseeing all these things, the mind, intelligence, senses, etc. So once the soul leaves the body, it moves on to the next body. And this body is acquired depending on our actions that we perform in this life. So that soul is everlasting, eternal. I think it was saying indestructible. And it is always active. And Srila Prabhupada gave a very good explanation on what it means by active. When the soul leaves the body, it doesn't just, stay back and be impersonal. It keeps moving. It goes from place to place until eventually it reaches the supreme abode. So, in this verse, this knowledge, it's said to have 6 qualities. It is the best, it is confidential, it is pure, it is the perfection of religion, it is eternal, and it is joyful. So, the very first step in acquiring this knowledge is coming to the understanding, I am not this body, but spirit soul, and my aim is to get out of this material entanglement. So we're going to read the next section, which is talking about how this knowledge is the key to knowledge. Krishna Prema, could you read the first paragraph here?
This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the King of Education because it is the essence of all the doctrines and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Shandila, and Vaishvarana. And finally, there is Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge.
It's like depth, one can say.
There is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge, the essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service.
So what is your summary from this section of the report?
So of all the different texts that we draw our knowledge from throughout the entire Vedas, we understand that ultimately it culminates in one has to understand what is the relation between the soul and the body. Which am I? And then how are the two intertwined and how are they not intertwined? So ultimately we have to understand that the body is simply a vessel. But it is a vessel for which, while in the material world, we can use for the ultimate goal and the main purpose of the soul, which is to render devotional service.
That was a nice summary, thank you. So there are many different scriptures in this Vedic tradition, and as we saw, many philosophers. I unfortunately don't know all of these philosophers, but I'm sure they have written many books on these different Vedic literatures. And all these different books out there, they're going to take you many lifetimes to get through. There's probably libraries you can fill with just these books. But it is said just by studying this 9th chapter, we can get the essence of all these texts that we couldn't finish reading. So just in this 9th chapter, you're going to get the essence. And this essence is not something you just find in the material world. When we get sick, like really sick, where do we go? We're going medicine. He's going to give you some medicine, right? He's going to try to give us relief from the sickness. And after taking that medicine, maybe you'll get cured from this particular disease, right? But is there a place on earth where you can become completely free from all diseases forever? No, that's not it. There's no such department. There's a department that, you can get relief from certain diseases here. There's another department where they manufacture all these medicines. But there's no department where the knowledge is given on how to be free from disease. But this knowledge, which is given by Krishna, the Raja Vidya knowledge, if you learn this knowledge, then you can become completely free from the conditioned stage in this material world. And then at the same time, it's described as the most confidential knowledge. It's just not disclosed to any ordinary man. Suppose, we're here discussing this knowledge, and we say, by understanding this knowledge, there's no more birth, death, disease, and old age. Now, an ordinary person, they'll just go, how is that possible? You can't do that. They're just not on that level of understanding. It's very confidential, not open to everyone. That doesn't mean we have a secret little class that you have to pay $100 for to get this confidential knowledge. But it's just not something everybody can understand. It's meant for selected people, those who are ready to receive the knowledge. Raja Guyam. Guyam means very, very confidential. And Srila Prabhupada, in this next paragraph, he talks about how there's many different institutions for studying material topics like politics, sociology, chemistry, mathematics, etc. But there's not an educational institution where the sciences, the spirit soul is instructed. Bhaktivedanta College, where we do discuss these things. But back when Srila Prabhupada wrote this text, there was no educational institution like that. The key to confidential knowledge is not discussed in these education. There's not a class at UCF titled "The Most Confidential Knowledge," Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9. There's no text like a class like that. But we're very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada, he's established many temples around the world where we do discuss these topics. And that's what he intended. He said in a lecture in Calcutta, temple means spiritual education shelter. People should come. They should learn what is spiritual life, what is God, what is my relationship with. That is temple. So this is here kind of like the educational institution. This is where you're going to get to know this confidential knowledge. So I talked about how it's the king, how it's the most confidential knowledge. And how next it's going to be talking about how it's pure. So in the material world, right, we're engaged in fruitive activities, different actions. And all our actions, whether they're good or bad, they have some result, or one could say karma. But the result may not come immediately. You might have, a seed, right? You plant a seed in the ground. If I plant a seed, is their oak tree going to sprout immediately? Big oak tree. No. It's just going to stay the seed. You've got to water the seed. It's going to sprout a little seedling, and then slowly it will grow into a big tree. So the results of our actions are like that tree. It's in different stages. Some are still seeds. Maybe you just did that action, and so it's going to take time. Then some are like in the little seedling stage, some are in more of a tree stage, and then once that tree bears fruit, that's when you enjoy the results of your activities. So you might have stopped the activity a long time ago, maybe even lifetimes ago, but the result is still waiting to bear fruit. So we kind of have like a very messy garden where we kind of just throw seed, and you got all these different plants and different stages of life, one could say. So it's just very messy. But with this confidential knowledge, it purifies the individual and cleans up the garden. And so we're going to read the next section of the purport. Krish, could you read this next section?
As explained in the 28th verse of the 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reactions of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. This statement is confirmed in the Padma Puran. Aprarabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalonmukham graminaiva pradiyata Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttamam, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttama means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with devotional service will know that they are not material activities. They are all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature.
So what was your summary from this section of the report?
If engaging in devotional service erases all the, I'd say the karma, or like the, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, simple, but yes, that's true. So we can see that this process of devotional service, it's purifying, and it cleans the sinful activities no matter what stage it is in. And additionally, unlike material activities, where we talked about, they're all in different stages. It might take time for the result to fructify. The execution of devotional service is so pure that you can get the direct result. Anyone who chants the holy name without offenses, feels happy, and immediately the cleansing process starts. They say, while you're scrubbing the pots, you're also scrubbing the heart of the different anartas and pulling those weeds that may hamper the creeper of devotional service. Now, that sounds all good and nice, but we have to remember the endeavor has to be there. We've been traveling through the material world for many lifetimes, and we've built up a lot of grease and grime from our past actions in the heart. So when you're washing the pots, say this is the pot, and you're just doing like this, just a little bit. Is that going to do much? No. But if I get some soap, I get some water, and I get a really strong sponge, and I just like putting my full energy into cleaning the pot. What is the pot going to be clean? Yeah.
Turn on the water.
Turn on the water. Thank you. Yes. Now, the intermediary steps are implied, but but if you're scrubbing, you're going to be cleaning the pot. But if you're just, maybe just rubbing it back and forth, it's not going to get very clean. You might get a little bit off, but it's not going to really get to the grease and grime. So the process of devotional service is pure, and Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, the method itself is so pure that it's by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. So this is a true fact. But to get the full 100% benefit, you have to put your heart into it. And then Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that if you go a step further and you go out and share the message of devotional service with others, your progress accelerates even faster. When the devotees would go out on book distribution, this would please Prabhupada very greatly. He said once, you should be very enthusiastic for distributing our books to schools, colleges, libraries, bookstores, and wherever else you can imagine that they will be very well received. These books are so nice that anyone who reads them is sure to become Krishna consciousness. And when the devotees would send Prabhupada a letter with their, whatever books they distributed, he would always say, this is very nice, this is like one of the highest things you can do is the book distribution. So going that extra step, that extra mile is really going to the grease is just going to fall off, and we're going to purify the heart. Now, devotional service, it's so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. As it said, the seeds, no matter what stage you're in, they're gradually vanishing. In the purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada, he makes reference to the story of Narada Muni. Who's Narada Muni? Son of Brahma, yes. I think there's a song out there where it's like Narada Muni, the eternal spaceman. So he's the son of Lord Brahma, who's the first created being in the universe. And he's one of the 12 Mahajans, and the Mahajans are like authorities on Krishna consciousness. And he appears in many of the stories described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Dhruva Maharaj, Krishna when he appears to Kamsa, Prahlad Maharaj. Basically every canto, there's Narada Muni. And in the first canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he's speaking to Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva, he feels incomplete because he's written so many texts, many Puranas, and he just feels something's missing. So Narada Muni, he's encouraging him, and in encouraging him, he's telling the story of how he got this confidential knowledge. So in the last millennium, he was born as the son of a maidservant. And this maidservant was engaged in the service of the Brahmanas. And this maidservant would live with them for 4 months during the rainy season and just helping them out with whatever they needed done. Now, normally, little children, 4 or 5, they're very raucous, very naughty. But Narada Muni, he said he was naturally self-controlled, not very naughty. He was just a very nice little boy. So he was associating with these great Brahmanas. And one day, one of his chores was to wash the dishes. And so after that, he asked the Brahmanas, can I take the remnants of the food on your plate? And the Brahmanas were like, yeah, sure, that's okay. And so when he ate their prasadam, it was said that all of his sins were eradicated and his love for devotional service awakened. He would listen to these great sages speak about the glories of the Lord after that. He was just absorbing all that knowledge. Narada Muni, he says in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.31, by that confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Shri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. So, in his next appearance, after he finishes this, Narada Muni is the son of Lord Brahma, and he's the first one who receives the knowledge from his father. And this begins the disciplic succession. It goes from Krishna to Brahma to Narada Muni, and then it goes down to disciplic succession. And, he's known as the eternal spaceman because he can travel anywhere in the universe. He can go to the spiritual world, he can go to the material world, he can go down to the hellish planets, he can go wherever he wants. And he does go wherever he wants. He has his Veena and he just goes around singing the glories of the Lord. Whenever they would depict him in the movies, what would he say? Narayan. And that's when you know Narada Muni was there. So in Bhagavad Gita 10:26, Lord Krishna himself says, "Of the sages among the demigods, I am Narada." So we can see from the story of Narada Muni how important it is to get the correct association. In the purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada says, "One who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization." You know, Narada Muni, he didn't have any opportunity to go to school because he was only the son of the maidservant. Back in those days, you had to be like Brahmana or Kshatriya or one of the higher classes to be able to go to these institutions or go study under a spiritual master. But he was only the son of a maidservant. But he was still able to get this great result. And that goes kind of into the fourth part of this verse where it's talking about how this is the perfection of religion. So this devotional service is the perfection of religion. You know, his process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. So, you know, we don't need to read many books or go to some school to get the knowledge. You can naturally get the knowledge by being around pure devotees, you know. The cyclic succession, Krishna, Brahma, Narada Muni, you know, it began with Krishna, right? So if we hear in this line, we'll be set. And we have Srila Prabhupada, who is in the cyclic succession. So if we hear his books or from his devotees, we will get that confidential knowledge. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 2254, it is said, "The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success." Just a moment. And actually, I have another story of Narada Muni that shows this point in action. So, once, Narada Muni, he went to Vaikuntha, and he asked Lord Vishnu, "Please tell me, what is the result of being in the association of devotees?" So the Lord just smiled, and he said, "My dear Narada, go to this particular forest on earth. In this forest, you're going to find a banyan tree. And on the left branch, right here, you're going to find the nest of a parrot. In this nest, there's going to be a newly born baby parrot. Ask the baby bird the same question, and it will give you the answer." So, Narada Muni, okay, I'll just go find this baby bird. So he followed Lord Vishnu's instructions and went to the tree. And as Narada Muni arrived, the egg that was in the nest hatched, and a tiny little parrot emerged. So Narada, he approached the bird and he asked, "Baby bird, please tell me, what is the effect of association with devotees?" But at the moment that the words were spoken, the baby bird fell down dead. The sound effects are not necessary. Thank you, though. Shocked. I mean, because he just asked the bird a question and the bird just went, psh, fell down dead. He returned to Lord Vishnu and he reported what had happened. And Lord Vishnu just smiled and said, "Okay, go to this certain village. And in this certain village, there will be a stable. And in this stable, there will be a calf that has just been born. Question the calf and get your answer." So Narada was like, okay, maybe this is like a fluke thing. So Narada went to the village and he found the newborn calf. And then as the calf was getting up on its legs, you know, when the calf is born, it flails around and then it gets up on its legs. It's not like, you know, a human baby where it takes them a year to walk. And so Narada asked, "Dear calf, please tell me, what is the result of associating with devotees?" As soon as he finished this question, the calf too fell down dead. And Narada Muni was now really, really sad. And he thought, "Oh man, what a sinful person I must be. I seem to be responsible now for 2 deaths. It can't be a coincidence." So he returned to Vaikuntha and he told Lord Vishnu what happened. And the Lord consoled him and said, "Don't worry, it's not your fault. In the stable of a king of Kashi, a foal has just been born." A foal is like a baby horse. So go and ask the baby horse for the answer. So, you know, Narada Muni was like, okay, but he was very obedient, so he went to this stable and he cautiously asked the baby horse the same question. But what happened? Just like the rest of them, the baby horse fell dead as soon as the question was completed. And now Narada Muni is just depressed. He's like, I must have the magic touch, but not really magic. It's just, as soon as I say something, everything's gonna fall down dead. So he returned to Lord Vishnu, and the Lord, he saw Narada's distressed condition, and he said, despite all your troubles, you haven't yet received your answer. Now do one more thing. A son has just been born to the king of Kashi. Go ask the baby your question. Now, Narada Muni is starting to get a little bit suspicious. He didn't want to cause anybody else to die. So he protested, no more, Lord. I don't want any more deaths on my account. Let my question remain unanswered. I'll just never know. And the Lord assured Narada, this time you're going to get the answer to your question. So Narada went to the palace of the king of Kashi. And there was much rejoicing in the palace because a prince had been born. Everybody was so happy. And when the king saw Narada Muni, not I, and he appeared, the king was like, oh my gosh, the great sage has blessed us. And he was like, I'm going to bring my son right to you. And he immediately brought his son to the stage for a blessing. So Narada, he gently took the baby in his arms and he asked, baby, kindly tell me, what is the result of association with devotees? What happens? No, he didn't die this time, actually. Thankfully, we got one. So actually, the baby spoke. And the baby said, O greatest of sages, have you not understood? I was the baby bird whom you questioned on the banyan tree. Because of a brief contact with a saint like you, I was released from that tiny body and was born as a calf. When you questioned me as a calf, I was able to leave that body and be born as a horse. Again, because of the brief contact with you, I was blessed with the most precious human form as the prince of the Kashi kingdom. This is the result of a brief association with devotees. I am grateful to you, a sage, for elevating me to this stage. And then he, I guess, went back to being a baby. Thankfully, the prince lived. So we can see from this story, just that moment association can change your life completely. Just flip it on its side. In this text, we've been talking about how this knowledge is confidential, right? But how do we access the confidential knowledge? What's the key? It's in the safe. What's the key to unlock it? There's 2 keys. You need 2 keys. Can anybody guess one? Yes?
Spiritual master.
Spiritual master, that's the mercy part of it. The knowledge of this most confidential knowledge, it's not something, you're scrolling on social media and you're like, oh, Raja Vidya, Raja Guyam, wow, that's very nice. I don't get those type of videos on Instagram, at least. Unless you follow ISKCON Orlando, then maybe you're going to get some of the good knowledge, eh? So you're all here because you had some interaction with a devotee or Srila Prabhupada's books, and that chance meeting led you to this practice. That's why that book distribution is such important work. Even if you give someone a book, and they're like, okay, here's $2. I just want to get rid of this guy who just keeps talking and hounding. I'll just give him $2, and they put it on the shelf. That book is like a seed, right? And remember what happens when you plant a seed? It goes into a little sprout, and then it grows into a little bigger, and then it grows into a big tree, right? So it will eventually sprout and fructify. And once you make it to this point, you've got that mercy, and you made it to ISKCON Orlando, you continue to make an endeavor on this path. You kept chanting the Hormeans. You kept reading Srila Prabhupada's books. But without that initial mercy, you wouldn't be here at all. I wouldn't be here. Anyone wouldn't be here. But what's the second key? Surrender. What kind of goes into that? That's very, very close. But what do you need to surrender? You can't just surrender. I can't just be like, oh, I surrender. I need faith. Faith, yes. So the second thing that's required is faith. In fact, the next verse of this chapter, it says, those without faith cannot attain Krishna's eternal abode, and they remain here in the material world. Faith is not something, I'm going to the grocery store, oh, faith's on sale. Let me grab a few of those, right? I wish. It has to be developed naturally. Srila Prabhupada says in the book, Teachings of Queen Kunti, if a woman gets married and wants a child immediately, it's not going to happen. She'll be disappointed. It's not possible to have that child immediately. She must wait. Similarly, we cannot expect that just because we engage ourselves in Krishna consciousness, we can see Krishna immediately. But we must have faith that we will see him. You know, earlier we mentioned that ordinary persons will just laugh if you tell them that this knowledge you can be free from birth, death, disease, because they don't have the faith. It's just words I'm saying. They don't have the faith behind it. And how is that faith developed? There's a lot of soft-spoken words out here. Somebody say it really nice and loud. Association with devotees, thank you. So that's what we just talked about, right? Narada Muni had that moment's association, that little bit of remnants of the sages, and he just got that. And he got that faith by listening to them speak. And so, to illustrate this point about faith, I actually want to tell another story. And who's this story about? Can anyone give a guess? Narada Muni. We got a Narada Muni theme going on today. And so I'm going to tell another story of Narada Muni. And this book actually comes from one of Srila Prabhupada's books. And it's titled Raja Vidya, the King of Knowledge. So actually the book that is written is all about this verse. So I was here at the temple yesterday and I was sorting through the book and I pick up this book and I'm like, Raja Vidya, that seems familiar. Wait a second. And I'm just reading and I'm like, and I knew I was giving a class of this. So it's all about this verse. So if you want to get a good deep dive into this knowledge and this topic, the book, it's available in database, but we do have physical copies if you do prefer physical copies. So in this story, Narada Muni, he was traveling around the universe as Narada Muni does, and he meets a Brahmana. And this Brahmana is doing his brahminical things, and he sees Narada Muni, and he asks, "Oh, are you going to meet the Lord? Will you please ask him when I'm going to get my salvation?" And Narada Muni is like, "All right, I'll ask him." And as Narada Muni proceeds through his travels throughout the universe, he's probably going to meet the Lord. He sees a cobbler, and the cobbler, the people who make shoes, and he was sitting under the tree mending the shoes. And the cobbler, he sees Narada Muni. He's like, "Oh, Narada Muni, are you going to see God? Will you please inquire from him when my salvation will come?" So Narada's like, "Okay, I'm already asking about the one guy, might as well ask about the other guy." And so when Narada Muni, he went to Vaikuntha, he fulfilled their request, and he asked the Lord about, so I met these two guys. One was this Brahmana, whatever his name was, and then this cobbler, and they both asked me the same question. When will my salvation come? Could you tell me about these two guys, just so I can let them know on my way back down? And Narayan replied, "After leaving this body, the cobbler shall come to me." Narada asked, "Okay, what about the Brahmana? I mean, he was, doing Brahminical things. He seemed engaged very nicely." And the Lord replied, "He'll have to remain there for a number of births. I don't know when he's coming, sometime." And Narada Muni was confused. He was telling the Lord, I can't understand the mystery of this. So Narayan, he told Narada, "When they ask you what I am doing in my abode, tell them I am threading the eye of a needle with an elephant." So you see the eye of the needle? Put an elephant through that. Is it impossible? Yeah? Jai, Shishimi Jai, Gauranga Ki.
How to put a thread inside?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to put a thread inside, let alone an elephant. So Narada, he was back down on his travels, and he got to the Brahmana. And the Brahmana, he was like, "Oh, have you seen the Lord? What was he doing?" And Narada Muni was like, "Well, he was doing a few things, but one thing he was doing was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle." And the Brahmana was like, "I don't believe such nonsense. That can't happen. It's impossible." And Narada, he was immediately understand. This man has no faith. He's just simply reading the books, just to read them and just doing the practices to practice them. But he has no faith behind it. He can't believe that the Lord can thread an elephant through the eye of the needle. And so then he left and he was going along, and then he came upon the cobbler. And then the cobbler asked him, "Oh, have you seen the Lord?" what is he doing? And Narada replied, of course, he was threading the eye of the needle with an elephant. And the cobbler, he just began to weep. Oh, my lord is so wonderful. He can do anything. Narada, he was like, do you really believe that the Lord can push an elephant through the hole of a needle? You know, the cobbler was like, why not? Of course I believe it. You can see that I am sitting under this banyan tree, and I can see that so many fruits from this banyan tree are falling daily. And each seed, there's a banyan tree like this one. So, if within a small seed there can be a big tree like this, is it difficult to accept that the Lord is pushing an elephant through the eye of a needle? So, Narada Muni, he could understand that the cobbler had faith, and that was why he would attain the Supreme Lord, you know. Actually, I was doing my research on this class, and there's so many stories of Narada Muni, because Narada Muni, he's been everywhere. And maybe one day we should just have a class focused on Narada Muni, and there's different stories of Narada Muni and what you can take from each of these. But you can see that the importance of faith was there. Without that faith, the cobbler was just ritualistic. He was just doing it for the sake of doing it because the books told him to do it. But the cobbler, even though he wasn't engaged in that, he was just, you know, doing his shoe work. He had the faith in the Lord, and that was that key difference. So we covered the first 4 things, you know. What was the first 4 things about the knowledge? What's the first one? From the verse. That's the second, yes.
King of education.
King of education, and then it's confidential. What's the third one? Uncontaminated, pure. And then what's the 4th one?
Faith.
Faith, kind of like, not really. It's talking about how this is the perfection of religion. So there's the 5th one, right, which is eternal. What does Krishna mean when he says that this knowledge is eternal? And Srila Prabhupada, he actually clarifies this in their purport, so I'm going to go to this. Let's see if I can find it. You can see this purport is very long. Next one. Yeah. Yes. Sunil Prabhu, could you read this paragraph in the purport?
It is said here that this devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will become one with God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He does not try to become one with the Supreme Lord.
Okay, so what did you get from this text?
So, Srila Prabhupada is trying to compare, not compare, but giving an example how Mayavadis believe in God and they want to become one with God. They just want to focus on something like zero or some light, and then at the end they want to merge with the Supreme Lord and become one with Him. But actually, who is doing the proper devotional service? They just completely rule out that idea that we can become one with God. It's more about serving the Supreme Lord. And that's the constitutional position of spirit soul.
Thank you. So, that's what it means by eternal, right? You know, in the material world, we have many goals, right? We wake up and we're like, today I gotta accomplish this. And these goals usually have an endpoint. You know, for example, in my line of work, I had to take an exam in order to be licensed. And it required studying for 4 or 5 months. But once I passed that exam, I didn't have to continue studying. It was like, okay, here's your certificate, you can hang it on the wall at work, and you don't have to do any more studying for the rest of your career. Which is true, I don't have to study anymore. But, you know, like the Mayavadis, they spend their entire life doing devotional service, or so-called devotional service, working towards this goal of merging into the Brahman effulgence. And then once they achieve that goal, the work is finished, and I can just enjoy being an eternal sparkle in the effulgence, right? But for the devotee, the devotional service never ends. You know, a devotee could be anywhere in the material world, even the hellish planets. But as long as they're engaged in the service of the Lord, they're satisfied. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that the real devotional service begins after liberation. We can actually just read this, I think that would be nice. Niti, could you read this text here?
As will be seen in Bhagavad Gita, actual devotional service begins after liberation. After one is liberated, when one is situated in the Brahman position, Brahma Bhuta, one's devotional service begins. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu mat bhaktikam labhate param. No one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Asanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. By these yogic methods, one may make a little progress towards Bhakti Yoga, but without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what is the personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it.
So we can see here the importance of how Bhakti Yoga is getting to this devotional service. Because you could go through all these yogas, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and they'll get you a little bit there. But Bhakti Yoga is kind of like going on the express lanes on I-4 when there's an accident. It'll get you right to your destination. So that is kind of what it means by eternal. You know, the goal is to be in the spiritual world, not because we're trying to be like, important person, but we're just there to serve the Lord. So we're going to read the last section of the purple. We're going to read Nalini Mataji. No. You can read this section of the purport.
The process of devotional service is a very happy one. Sukham. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn, then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toya. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what. Even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history simply by tasting the tulasi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. Great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him.
So what did you get from this text?
think last sentence summarizes it all. God accepts love, anything that you offer with love, whatever you think, you do, you act, you hear, you see, offer it to Lord with love, accept them with love, or do them with love. That's all.
Yes, thank you, Martin. So, in this section of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains how this process, it's so simple and so joyful. You know, when Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he started these Sunday Love Feast programs, you know. It would focus on some chanting, Srila Prabhupada would speak for a little bit, and then they would eat prasadam. You know, simple living, high thinking. That's one of the terms Srila Prabhupada coined. You know, just by all of you sitting here, you're performing devotional service. Now, I don't see many smiling faces out there. I'm very sorry. I just keep droning on and on. But it is joyful if you really put your heart into it. Especially, you know, when you're dancing, you're eating some good prasadam, then maybe the smiles will come back. And Narada Muni Das, who is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he tells this story of how he helped cook for the San Francisco Ratha Yatra. And after the parade, they went to this place called the Big Family Dog Auditorium. And thousands of hippies were intensely chanting while Vishnu John Swami was leading kirtan. And he was saying, chant, chant. And when you're tired, take prasadam and chant more and more and more. And all the hippies, it was said they were dressed in full regalia. Apparently, many of them were like dressed as Radha and Krishna and in different costumes like that. I wish I had a picture. Maybe I'll find a picture. And it just made this incredible scene. And then, in the middle of it all, Srila Prabhupada, he came walking through the crowd, kind of like it said, like a swan. And then Prabhupada, he went up to the stage and he declared, does anybody know what he said? No. He said, I have come to make the hippies happies. And that just, everybody went crazy. And it said that it invoked a tremendous tumult of transcendental roaring from all the devotees that were present. And everyone got swept away in this tidal wave of ecstasy that was coming from Srila Prabhupada's heart. And they danced for hours and hours. They chanted, and then they took prasadam, and then they chanted more and more. So it was just Srila Prabhupada's potency. He just wanted to make the hippies to happies. And, you know, this Krishna conscious process, it's easy. It's not complicated at all. You know, it's stated in the purport here that you can perform devotional service even if you're in a poverty-stricken condition. You know, I was reading an article once, and it was talking about this church in Mexico. And the pastor was like, you know, I got this divine teaching from God. And God told me I should sell plots in heaven for $100 a square meter. I don't know how much a square meter is, but imagine, you know, if you want to plot, you know, that's some money there. And he was like, we take cash, we take PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, all these sort of things, you know, and they were just, I was just like, that was just so mind-boggling to me that in order to get into heaven, you had to pay now $100, $1,000, whatever the price was. You know, Max, when we have services here in the temple, do you ask the devotees, okay, you can go ahead and wash pots for a small fee of $10?
It's a good fundraiser.
No.
We're not going to start doing that. No. Hmm?
You can sell the prasadam for
Yeah? Yeah.
$4.
Mahaprasada, no, $4. No, but the devotional service, it doesn't require a fee, right? All you need is the enthusiasm and the desire to do it for the Lord properly. You know, Krishna doesn't limit anyone from devotional service. You know, the verse Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam that was referenced in this section of the purport. It's also from this 9th chapter, part of this confidential knowledge. Krishna, he accepts any kind of offering you can do. You know, you can just pick a flower or get a fruit, just a bag of fruit, and you can offer it to him. And if you're doing that offering with your full heart, with love, Krishna accepts it, because Krishna is, you know, he sees the flower, the fruit, it's nice, but as it said in the last line, God accepts only the love with which things are offered him. He's accepting that love. Now, if you have more than the means to offer more than a flower, you live in a nice house, maybe, you should endeavor to contribute a little more. I'll just do a flower, that'll be enough. You should endeavor to do it to the greatest of your potential. But anything done with love is accepted by the Supreme Lord. Now, there's things you can't offer to the Lord, of course, but if you offer what he likes with love, then he accepts it. So, throughout this class, we've been telling the story of one personality. Who's that personality? Narayana. So Narada Muni, he's the eternal spaceman who travels singing the glories of the Lord. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we kind of have our own kind of eternal spaceman who travels, maybe not the whole universe, but travels the world speaking about the Lord. Who's our kind of eternal spaceman? Srila Prabhupada. And so he notes in a purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada, 6.5.2, the immediate spiritual master is the representative of Narada Muni. There is no difference between the instructions of Narada Muni and those of the present spiritual master. And it was said in 1966, the New York devotees, they rented out an expensive auditorium near Carnegie Hall. And they were hoping, we're renting out this expensive place, we're hoping of attracting influential people. And only 7 people showed up. And, if I gave class and only a few of you showed up, I would feel a little sad. But when one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples apologized, mentioning almost no one had come, we did all this expense, Srila Prabhupada, and nobody came. Prabhupada, he just raised his eyebrows and said, no one? You didn't see Narada Muni? There's actually quite a few stories that were said, I think just in London, in Berkeley, there was many stories of Srila Prabhupada just saying, oh yes, Narada Muni, he was there. Only Srila Prabhupada had the vision to see Narada Muni. And even though Srila Prabhupada, he's not physically present in this world anymore, his words travel the entire globe through his books, just like Narada Muni travels around the world. In the Padma Purana, the Kumaras, they reveal to Narada Muni how bhakti can be established. As when a lion roars, wolves flee in fear. So merely by the sound of Srimad Bhagavatam, all the vicious qualities of Kali Yuga are destroyed. And who brought us the Srimad Bhagavatam? Yes, but in this modern time, who brought it? Srila Prabhupada. The Bhagavatam, which is the very book, actually, that Narada Muni, after he told his story of how he became Narada Muni, that's what he told Vyasadeva to write. You should be writing about the Supreme Lord. And then he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. And it was written to purify the fallen souls of this age. And this book became Srila Prabhupada's chief weapon to vanquish the wolf-like evils of Kali Yuga and deliver the fallen conditioned souls in the West. Because I was reading an article in Back to Godhead, and it was talking about all the similarities actually between Narada Muni and Srila Prabhupada, and how they emphasize different points, and how Srila Prabhupada would emphasize certain points. So it's just really nice to see how Srila Prabhupada is kind of our eternal spaceman that travels the world through his books. So this confidential knowledge that's explained in the 2nd chapter, it's very important. It's the king of knowledge. It's confidential. It's pure. It's the perfection of religion. It's eternal, and it's supremely happy. So I hope that was kind of like a little bit of just like a little, tease on what this knowledge is. And of course, in the entirety of the 9th chapter, Srila Prabhupada, he goes into detail with his purports on how to perform this. So with that, we have about 10 minutes or so. If anyone has any questions or comments or thoughts or anything of that nature. Yes, Krish. Let's get a microphone.
Krishna Mataji, amazing class. So I had a question. You had an analogy about the seed and how it grows. And then you spoke about faith and how it's developed.
Yes.
So my question was that how can we develop this faith to,
Yes.
more and more?
Yes. So one thing that is mentioned is to be in the association of the devotees. Those devotees, they have that potency, and they say things in such a way that you do believe them. And reading Srila Prabhupada's books, for example, he's one of those devotees who, he would just say something, and it would just make complete sense. But it does take a little bit of, I guess, because you can't see Krishna really, right? He's not visible like this mic stand is visible. So it requires a little bit of acceptance. The difference between true faith and blind faith. Blind faith is just whatever is said, I will accept. And that's not going to be sustainable in the long run. You have to kind of analyze, does this make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, is it from the correct source? And if you don't understand it, there's always, again, going to that association of pure devotees and saying, hey, I was reading this in Srila Prabhupada's books and I didn't quite understand it. I was wondering if you could help me explain it. So developing that faith requires some effort. It's not just blind faith. You have to analyze it. And because once you acknowledge, yes, I believe this is correct, it's going to be a stronger foundation. I don't know if that helped make sense.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
You have to chant Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Because the knowledge is already there. The soul already has the knowledge. You just have to remember. The remembrance comes from the practice of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So, with that chanting, then you purify the heart. Chittadarpana Marjana, you study the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 6 Ashtakar, you understand. That's the key. Of course, to understand that mantra, you need association of the devotees.
Yes.
One more thing.
Sure.
We do have to pay. Yes.
Time. Yes.
And then, after time, you laugh.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Prabhu. That's a very important point. Going on that forgetfulness, it's said that Krishna is the source of remembrance and forgetfulness. And I have one more short story of Narada Muni that I was reading. It's a short story. So, Indra, the king of heaven, was once cursed. I don't know what he did. He does things sometimes. And he was cursed to be a hog. And Narada Muni was, he didn't want the kingdom of heaven to just be left without a king because, the demons, they see this as a golden opportunity to take heaven for myself. So Narada Muni, he went to earth, and then he went to this hog that was incarnated as Indra. And he told the hog, hey, remember the heavenly planets? Back. And the hog, is Indra, he's like, what about my hog family, my hog children, my delicious hog goodies, And so Narada Muni had to remind Indra, no, you're the king of heaven. You need to remember and go back to your position. So again, Narada Muni is there to help us. And again, it was that association of devotees, getting that little bit of knowledge to help the Indra remember. So a lot of good stories of Narada Muni. Yes, that's what I was saying.
So, one funny incident happened yesterday during our Bhagavad reading. And again, the question, I'm thinking about the question, how we develop faith? And faith is developed by hearing, right? Sometimes by seeing, but first thing is hearing. Because hearing is always awake when you're asleep. You're sleeping in the night, something happens. So what do you do first? You see first or you hear first? You heard it, right? There's something on the kitchen, something anyway. So we hear first. So hearing is something that we have to verify as well. I've heard this, I've heard this. So the funny thing that happened yesterday, for some people, for 30 years, 40 years or more, they heard that Narakasura was killed by Satyabhama. And then one fine day, we read yesterday in the Bhagavatam, Narakasura was killed by Krishna. So we have to verify the source, and we verified the source yesterday. The Bhagavatam says Krishna killed Narakasura. But somehow we heard the stories from families and everything else, and we developed the faith. It's a good story from religious books, and it's true. But verification wasn't done by anybody. Now we have got the right source. May the source be with you, Hare Krishna.
Yes, can we get a microphone?
Oh,
yes, right here.
Could you go back to the place where you listed all the philosophers?
Oh yeah, that's like the first.
Normally in the purport he breaks them down.
See, this is a very long purport.
So, many, if not all of these, there's considered 6 major schools of philosophy in India. Prabhupada describes elsewhere, and these are the acharyas of that system. The Nyaya system by Gautama Rishi. That's Gautama Rishi, not Gautama Buddha.
Yeah.
The Vaisheshika system by Kannada. The philosophy of Sankhya by the atheistic Kapila, not the son of Deva, Kapila. The mystic yoga system of Patanjali. The philosophy of Karma Mimamsa by Jaimini, and the philosophy of Vedanta by Vyasadeva. So, after presenting an elaborate case of why Krishna consciousness is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, the king of the last sentence in the purport is a call to action. Therefore, one should adopt it.
Yes, very important. Thank you for the clarification, Prabhu. I appreciate it. We have 3 minutes.
Does someone have a question?
Yes.
Hare Krishna. I loved the stories of all the Narad Muni ones. Is there a place we can go to read them?
Srimad Bhagavatam has a lot of these stories. And I think that's going to be your most, bona fide source, because, just going on Google, you could just do Narada Muni stories, and you're going to get all sorts of different websites with all sorts of different Narada Muni stories. But you got to remember, it's got to be from the right source. Like, I was reading a few there from, like, ISKCON Desire Tree, a lot from Srimad Bhagavatam, so there has to be that right source. But yeah, just if you look at Narada Muni stories and you just first check the website to make sure it's good, then you should be able to find quite a few.
Just put anything you want to search, just put whatever you want to do, put in space Prabhupada. Narada Muni space Prabhupada, Krishna space Prabhupada, whatever like this, so we get the sources properly from these books.
Fact checking.
Yeah, like a book.
Okay. If you're curious to check your sources, actually something that this one is Kesava Swami's rolled out. It's called the Hare Krishna search engine.
Oh,
so if you want to cross-reference anything that you look up on Google, or Bing if you're weird, it will actually, it's an extension that you can add on, or you can just go to the website, and it will functionally act as a transcendental search engine. So it will only pull sources that are reference to Shastra or literature that's produced in the Vedic version. So try it out, search Narada Muni.
Oh, okay. Give me a second.
So that way you know it's written by an acharya or someone who studied philosophy properly and cited their sources, and not some random guy in their mom's basement.
Yeah. It's loading. The Wi-Fi is not so good, but see, and then it'll give you bona fide sources on Narada Muni, the Bhajan. See, Srila Prabhupada's story. Srila Narada Muni come. That's one. And so if you just scroll through, you'll find all sorts of good stories. Thank you so much for making that.
One more golden minute left.
Yes. Now.
Yes.
Well, I'll take it. I just wanted to go on your story for my gratitude for actually my association with devotees. So I'm super addicted to reading, so I've read a lot. prior, then I finally reached out to Dwight when I first came here. And so from the association with him, now I've been addicted to reading everything about Krishna, and I would sing about Krishna, and everything I do pretty much is just, I'm super addicted to reading everything that Srila Prabhupada has written, and now I have an association with everybody here, and just from that moment of reaching out to Dwight and him meeting with me, and this shows that one moment of association can grow into something really huge. So that's my gratitude for him and everybody here.
This is the addiction you want to do also.
So now let's put the smiles on our faces. Everybody do Vikram.
Sukham
Sukham, come on. Very happy. And now we are going to do Gaur Arti. Got it. Hare Krishna.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai.